Those are the timestamps in the event log, correct?
Are you able to say why there is not a video when your report indicates there is a trigger pull?
Again, I'm simply just reporting the data that's on the device. It's not uncommon to sometimes see discrepancies in timestamps depending on how the data is recorded. But for any information about that specifically, you need somebody from TASER to comment.
At the end of this video, and I know I asked you to focus on the timestamp, but at the end of the video, could you hear the noise? Sounded like pop, 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 pop.
Yes.
Are you familiar with a TASER? Have you ever test fired one?
No, but I'm familiar with how they sound.
And the noise that you heard, that's consistent with a TASER, the trigger being pulled, correct?
Yes.
But again, according to your log, there is not a trigger pull during this time that is on the video according to the timestamp.
Correct, according to the timestamps.
Going back just briefly to the trigger pull that you talked about that is notated in your report as April 22nd, but looking at Eastern Daylight Time happened sometime late on April 21st. You pulled a video from that as well.
Yes, I did.
And that video depicts what's called a testing of the actual TASER, correct?
That's what the content looks like, correct.
And in the video, there is a door basically where someone is test firing to make sure that the TASER is functional.
Correct.
It is not a situation where it's being used on anybody.
Correct.
There appears to be a 15-second break, I'll call it, between the end of the first video and the beginning of the second video that has come into evidence, correct?
Correct.
And based on your analysis, there is no video during that time frame, correct? And there is no way that a video was deleted during that time frame.
Correct.
Based on your download, the videos file names synchronized perfectly, chronologically, one after another.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
Just want to follow up on a couple of things. Ms. Belote asked you. Yes, Sean.
No, Judge, it's the same one that has already been admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Belote asked you about certain information in your report and your testimony that there was corruption among some of the logs.
Correct.
Okay. And at one point in time, she asked you about what the logs and the corruption meant, and you responded and you explained to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what the corruption meant, and basically that it was timestamps that were off, or something that caused the data not to show up the right way, where we have, for example, maybe the year 2069, something that's not here.
Correct.
Okay. And at some point she asked you about those corruptions and its meaning that it hadn't been altered in any way. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that that was the case. I want to get clarification, though. You have not been with this TASER for any extended period of time other than when you analyzed it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so your statement that it had not been altered in any way, it means that data, correct?
Correct.
And you're not referring to the TASER itself?
Correct.
All right, thank you. I don't have anything further.
No follow-up, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Can it be excused?
Yes, Sean.
You may be excused. Next one.
Gregory Provo.
Gregory Fuller. Don't remove the hat. Take your hat off, sir, please. Take your hat off, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please state your name for the court.
Rankin Provo.
Mr. Provo, how are you employed?
I do security for Wal-Mart located on 1098 Frederick Boulevard, Portsmouth.
And were you, I'm sorry, good afternoon. And were you employed in that capacity on April 22nd of 2015?
Yes, I was.
And were you working on that morning?
Yes, I was.
And on that day, did you have occasion to come in contact with someone we now know to be named William Chapman?
Yes, I did.
And on that day, did you also have occasion to make contact with the defendant in this case?
Yes, I did.
And do you see him here in the courtroom today, the person you came in contact with?
Yes, I did.
And I would ask the record to reflect the witnesses identified the defendant. And so you came into contact with both of these individuals on the morning of April 22nd, 2015.
Correct.
Tell the court what you observed outside of the Walmart on that morning.
Outside, first contact I had with Mr. Rankin was in front of our general merchandise area. He was pulling up to where the cops usually sit at when we get a shot up there. Basically, approached him. I was in my car already. Went side by side. Basically, like let him know he was getting out of his car at the time. Let him know, hey, the suspect was walking across the parking lot, going towards the back end. Let him know what he had on. Kind of pointed him out. He said, okay, I'm gonna go get him. He got in his car. I kind of followed behind him. He pulled up beside him. I pulled up in basically like a drive area where you can get outside of Walmart. Basically, I pulled up right there. Initially, he came out the car, approached. I was kind of looking from my window. You can't really hear too much at the distance I was at.
And what distance were you at that point in time?
It was probably, I would give about 40 yards.
40 yards at that time? Okay. I'm sorry, please finish.
At that point, you see Rankin basically talking to him. They're head to head. You see him at that point. I was kind of putting my car in park, so when I looked back up, he had him on the car, like in front of the hood of the car.
And when you say he had him, I'm going to ask you to name the names. Are you referring to the defendant? Are you referring to the victim in this matter?
Rankin had Chapman on the front of the hood of the car.
Okay, and how did he have him on the hood of the car? Can you show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury with your hands and kind of explain the way bodies were positioned, please?
Where I was positioned, I couldn't really see the hands. You can just see the front part of them, but you can basically like how if you were be detaining somebody and you would have them leaning on top of the car. He was basically like kind of in front of the car, leaned over. Rankin was kind of right behind him.
Okay, so was his face, was the victim's face facing the car?
It was facing like down, but it was still up because he was. You can, like I said, you couldn't hear nothing, but you can basically he was kind of yelling.
Okay.
You can hear him.
All right. So finish telling what you saw after that point.
At that point, when I was getting out the car to assist him. At that point, when I was getting out, basically, I didn't see the taser fall, but they kind of like when he got up off the car, he kind of like swung back, basically swung, and there was like face to face. And when I was running up and walking up to Rankin at that point pulled his gun out. We was giving commands to get on the ground. At this point, I was side by side. Me and Rankin was basically right beside me. The guy, he was more in the middle of the cop car. We was basically in front of the cop car. At that point, there was a gesture made as if you're about to fight, and you make like a quick gesture, like I'm about to. I can't really describe it. It's basically like he's making a quick gesture to fight. He made that gesture, and after that, that's when the gunshots were.
Okay. Can you stand up? And you said, I want you to demonstrate a couple of things if you can. You said he flung around. Can you show what you mean by that?
Basically, like I said,
Can we
around.
ask who he's referring to and he?
You're referring to,
He said he, who was he?
Chapman. I'm sorry. Chapman, he kind of swung around on Rankin when I was getting out the car, and then when I was approaching, we're at the distance of, I would say from here to the desk.
okay, now let me just stop you there. You say we, so you indicated at this time you were side by side with the defendant.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
He was kind of pulling back, but still had his gun out on him.
Okay, and at that point you were the distance from where you are now to there.
From Chapman will be at the desk, and me and Rankin side by side.
The record doesn't have the picture, so that's about 100 feet yards.
How many feet or yards is that? From here to here?
From probably about 5 to 10 yards. It wasn't that big of a distance.
Okay.
About 5 yards.
All right, and let me just ask you, why were you approaching in the way you were?
To assist Rankin. Basically, I kind of assist officers. If I see something that goes down, I was going to assist.
Okay. And you indicated that there was a gesture that was made. Can you show exactly how that gesture was made? And you indicated that was done by the victim in this case?
Chapman, basically, when he was face forward, it's kind of like you put yourself in a fighting position and you make like a quick gesture, like a jab step, basically.
Okay. So did he move forward and stay forward?
No,
did he continue to move forward, or did he?
He
What?
jabbed and came back, basically. Like
So actually, when he jabbed forward, he came back.
Right.
And were you able to see his hands at this time?
They were kind of to his waist.
Okay. And did he have anything in his hands?
No.
All right. And what happened after he did this jab and kind of went back? What happened after that point?
After that, that's when those 2 shots came out from Rankin.
Okay, came out from Rankin. And when did you said that by the time you got side by side with the defendant that he had drawn his service weapon?
Correct.
All right. And when he fired those 2 shots, what did you see Mr. Chapman do?
The first, it was simultaneously, so it was kind of fast, but it's going to sound kind of weird because I slowed. While I'm there, it's kind of looked like in slow motion, but based on the first shot, he tensed up, and then the second shot brought him back.
All right. So once again, please stand up, and if you can, show us after the first shot how he tensed up. What do you mean by that?
Like I said, he was already kind of in a fighting position, like with his hands up towards. So when he flinched and did that, he was kind of right here. So the first shot kind of like basically stiffened him up, and then the second shot brought him back.
Okay.
He kind of fell back on his butt, and then fell back all the way.
All right. So after you said he did this and came back, he
jerked.
froze. He jerked after the first one, and then after the second one, he fell
Correct.
and landed on his behind.
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I come up and retrieve Commonwealth Exhibits number 18 and 19? Thank you. May I approach, Your Honor?
This is Commonwealth Exhibit number 18, and this has been admitted as evidence of Commonwealth Exhibit number 19. That was William Chapman.
Judge Matt, also, she's pointing out something in the picture. I just wanted to see where you were pointing to. Yeah.
You indicated that you obviously have the defendant here in the courtroom today. You indicated that you came in contact with someone we know to be William Chapman. Do you see him in either one of these photos?
Yes, he's the male laying down.
Okay, and I would ask the record to reflect that the witness has identified the victim in the photos. And this is in Commonwealth Exhibit number 19. That you, this photo right here?
Correct.
Okay. Do you see where you would have been in either one of these photos?
In 18, you can see a little better.
Your Honor, may I have permission to publish you to the jury? You were sick. Do you see where you were better in number 18?
Correct.
You have to step down, sir. You may step down. Or you may step down, sir. Oh, sure.
Okay. Are you able to see where you were in this photo?
The cop car kind of was pretty close to where we was at, facing this kind of area.
Okay. And that was where you and the defendant were at the time that the shooting took place?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you initially drove over in your car, what area were you in during that time?
I was where this car was, yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. You can. All right, now let's talk about after those shots happened, after you saw Mr. Chapman get shot. What happened after that point?
After that, Mr. Rankin called for shots fired. He went over to Mr. Chapman. At that point, he put him in handcuffs. I walked off to throw up on the side. Basically, when I came back, he had him up on his, basically kind of had him up on his, like he would be kneeling down and you had him up on him.
Okay, hold on, let's slow down. So he had him up on him, what do you mean? How did he have him? What was he doing?
At the point where I seen him, he was, basically, when he was, after he handcuffed, I don't know if you want me to illustrate.
Yes, please.
Chapman's on the ground, he's kind of down on the ground with him, and he had him up, kind of telling him to breathe at that point. And then I was about to walk off, and basically it's illustrated that, please don't go far, basically don't go far, it's my second one.
Okay. And when you said he had him, he was on his knees, the defendant was on his knees at this time, and he had him.
Correct.
What do you mean by he had him? Where was Mr. Chapman's body
Mr. Chapman,
in respect to where the defendant was?
he had him on him.
Okay.
He had him on him, he was basically like telling him to breathe.
Okay, but was he doing anything other than holding him at that point?
At that point, like I said, I was kind of there for like a brief second. I wasn't there too long to see after the fact, but at that point, he wasn't doing it, he was just telling him to breathe, and he was calling for assistance.
Okay, all right. And what did you do after that time? Did you stay on the scene or did you leave and go talk with state police?
I left and came to get my car, and when I came to get my car, I parked it in the middle, and at that time, kind of people was coming up, so I was kind of telling people to back up, and I walked over. At that point, that's when I did see him on top of Mr. Chapman, but at that time, the cops were starting to follow me.
Okay. And this time of morning, were there a lot of people at the Walmart prior to this incident taking place?
It wasn't a big crowd. It wasn't like it was early in the morning, so it wasn't a big crowd. I was probably outside. I was probably in the Walmart parking lot. Outside, probably about 15 people, 10, 15, like that.
Okay.
And that was people getting out of their cars or parking.
This time, please answer any questions the defense counsel or the court may have for you. May I approach the clerk with the exhibits, please?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good.
I want to make one point with you to begin with. You heard Officer Rankin tell Mr. Chapman, get on the ground, correct?
Correct.
You were standing right next to him, according to you, and heard him say, get on the ground, get on the ground.
Correct.
Mr. Chapman never got on the ground.
Correct.
Instead, Mr. Chapman made a gesture and a fighting motion towards this officer.
Correct.
Never got on the ground and obeyed any command.
Correct.
All right. Let's go back to the beginning. You work Wal-Mart security.
Yes, sir.
You've been there for how long a period of time?
6 years.
16?
6.
6, I'm sorry, my fault. And at the time of the event back in April the 22nd of 2015, you were in the same attire, if you will. I mean, you were in shorts and a T-shirt, I think, right?
I was in shorts and had a long sleeve workout shirt on.
Okay, but you had your dreads at the same time?
Correct.
All right. And I think you've looked at the video of the event from that day?
I looked at it one time, but after that.
And you saw yourself in the video?
Correct.
All right. So you made a call to dispatch 911, correct?
Correct.
And on that call, you asked for assistance, which again was just standard procedure.
Correct.
You asked for assistance with respect to a suspected shoplifter.
Correct.
Again, nothing out of the ordinary at this particular point.
No.
After that call, the dispatcher then sent an officer to you who turned out to be Officer Rankin.
Correct.
Again, at this particular point, nothing strange, nothing out of the ordinary.
No.
Officer Rankin and you were side by side in your vehicles?
Yeah, when he pulled up, he was getting out of the vehicle, and at the time I was basically yelling out my window, like, hey, you know, he's right there walking across, basically describing.
All right, so you described what turned out to eventually be Mr. Chapman.
Correct.
And you pointed out who eventually turned out to be Mr. Chapman to Officer Rankin.
Correct.
And you pointed him out so that there would be no dispute or no question that the person that Officer Rankin eventually was going to stop was the same person that you had suspected of the shoplifting.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, that's what happened.
Correct.
You pointed him out, Officer Rankin went directly to that particular person.
Correct.
Did you see Officer Rankin get out of the car to approach who eventually turned out to be Mr. Chapman?
While I was parking, I didn't see him get out the car. I was in parking, but I was basically positioning myself so I can get a good angle.
Okay.
I did not see him get out the car.
All right. Did you see him approach and begin to speak to Mr. Chapman?
Correct.
And that was, if I could ask Ms. Below to help, Judge, may I retrieve 18 and 19, please? And if we're looking at Comos Exhibit 18, Judge, may he come down with the pointer, please?
Step down.
First of all, Mr. Provo, can you point out again for us, just from a reference standpoint, where you were or where your car was or where you were located?
It's my car, right?
That,
That's
the white one? I mean, there's a couple of cars.
This one right here, yeah, this one.
Okay.
It's a car.
The one in the front or the one in the back?
The one in the back.
The one in the back, okay. And at the time that you pulled up there, obviously none of those other cars, but for the police car, were present.
Correct.
The car that's in front of you wasn't there.
No.
And this white car that we see to the left, that wasn't there either.
No.
All right, so you're in your car. Do you actually get out of the car when you see Officer Rankin talk to Mr. Chapman?
No, I stayed in my car the whole time.
Okay.
Until, like I said, you see him switch around.
All right. In this picture, Comos Exhibit 18, are you able to point to where you saw Officer Rankin begin to speak to Mr. Chapman?
Well, when I first seen him?
Yes.
Right in front, but in front here.
The front of the car. That's the first time that you saw them talk?
Right.
Any contact between the two of them?
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. All right, if you could return to your seat, please. At that time, it's true that there were some words that were exchanged between Officer Rankin and Mr. Chapman.
You can't hear nothing. All you can just hear yelling. You can hear loud voices, but you can't.
Okay, but you could tell that there was some sort of dialogue going on between the two of them, correct?
Right.
Officer Rankin, Mr. Chapman, Officer Rankin.
Correct.
It was going both ways.
Correct.
And you heard voices.
Correct.
Those voices were loud.
Correct.
And those voices were loud with respect to both of the individuals, Rankin and Chapman.
Correct.
But you couldn't tell exactly what was being said.
Right.
At that point, did you see Officer Rankin try and escort Mr. Chapman from that location to a different part of the car?
I didn't see him at that point.
I'm sorry?
No, I just, like I said, when I got on them, they were right there in front of the hood. For the most part, that's where they were at.
All right, well, didn't you in fact see Officer Rankin put his hands on Mr. Chapman to try and turn him around to move him against the car?
Like I said, when I said I seen him is when Mr. Chapman was on the top of the car and he was behind him.
Okay.
I didn't see no hand motion or nothing like that. So.
All right, now, you have given several different interviews about this case, correct?
But I had one interview.
Sir?
I had one interview with state police.
Well, you had a first interview with the Portsmouth Police Department.
They didn't interview me.
You gave a statement.
Yeah.
All right. You had a second interview with the state police.
That was my first interview, but yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry. The statement that you gave to the Portsmouth Police was on the 22nd of April, correct?
Correct. But
Sa- Like, really quickly.
Right.
The interview that you had with the state police was also on the 22nd.
Correct.
And that interview took place at the police station on County Street.
Correct.
And at that time, the event had just occurred.
Right.
The event was fresh in your mind.
Correct.
It was within, well, it looks like it was about 12 o'clock, so we're talking maybe 4 or 5 hours from the time that it happened, right?
Correct.
And you wanted to be accurate with the police?
Correct.
You wanted to be honest with the police?
Correct.
You wanted to tell the police everything that you knew?
Correct.
Because they were interviewing you because you had seen what had occurred.
Correct.
And you told the state police, did you, on that day at about 12 o'clock, that they had a little words with him, he put his hands on him to try to get him to turn around and moved him up against the car. Do you remember saying that?
Right.
Okay. So you did see him, in fact, move him and put him up against the car.
I couldn't see the hands, but you can see, like I said, the gestures. You can see.
Okay. And at that point, did you still hear voices on one side, voices on the other side?
Correct.
Loud,
Like.
yelling,
Correct.
Chapman and Rankin.
Correct.
And at that point, I think, are you getting out of your car and approaching the situation?
Correct.
Because you thought that there may be some issue because here you have an officer and a man, and man's yelling at the officer?
Initially, yeah.
Right.
Well, this doesn't really happen. So when it does happen, I'm always kind of there. So, you know what I'm saying? When I started seeing that it wasn't a regular, get back in my car.
We had left the routine.
Correct.
We had left the no big deal.
Correct.
And it started to escalate at that point.
Correct.
So you get out of your car to potentially assist and see what you could do to help the officer.
Correct.
At that point, is it true that you saw Mr. Chapman start to pull his arm away from the officer.
Correct.
And is it true that at that point you saw what appeared to be a scuffle or a tussle that occurred between the two of them?
I didn't see a scuffle. It was more of a, when he turned around, I couldn't see the taser, like I said. I didn't know what was behind him. But as you turn around, you can see him kind of like snatch his arm.
Now you need to say who is who,
Oh,
okay?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's all right.
Chapman turned around. That's when he made the gesture of like swiping around, basically like swiping to get away.
Swiping with his arm?
Correct.
And the arm struck the officer?
I don't recall.
You didn't see that part of it?
No. Not that I didn't see, I just don't recall if he did hit him or not.
All right. Now, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Like, members of the jury, you may hear some music. I think they are having a practice on a concert at the pavilion, okay? There's nobody in the building, okay?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Mr. Probe, I want to show you a document and ask you if you can identify this document. So I don't want you to tell about it. I just want you to know if you can look at it and tell us what this is.
That's a statement sheet.
Okay. Is that a statement that you gave to the Portsmouth Police Department?
Correct.
And that's a statement that you gave to the Portsmouth Police Department on the 22nd of April, the day of the event?
Correct.
And is it true that you spoke to the police prior to the time you spoke to the state police?
Yeah, I spoke to, yes.
Right. So you gave this statement to the Portsmouth Police before you gave the statement to the state police?
Correct.
So if we established already that the state police was about 12 o'clock, this is even closer in time to the event, correct?
Correct.
And is it your handwriting?
That's my handwriting.
And that's your signature at the bottom, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in your statement to the police, the Portsmouth police, did you tell them that at that point the officer approached and the subject began fighting with the officer?
I don't recall what I put down.
Sure.
but-
May I show this to you to help you with your recollection?
Correct.
And in fact, that's what you wrote, that the subject began fighting with the officer?
Yes, sir.
And you said today that you don't remember the taser?
Yeah, I seen the taser, I didn't see it in his hand. Basically,
Okay.
what I'm trying to basically say. It's like, I know the taser there because when I first walked up, there was a taser cartridge on the ground.
Did you tell the Portsmouth police, the officer then, or excuse me, did you write in your own handwriting to the Portsmouth police? The officer then deployed his taser?
The taser, yeah. Like
See-
I said, that's when I see the cartridge, that's why.
Okay. And at that point, that taser, once you saw it deployed or once you saw it used, you saw a reaction on the part of Mr. Chapman, didn't you?
Correct.
And you talked today about his arm, I think you called it, was it flailing?
Kind of like you would try to swipe somebody away.
Okay. And you wrote in your statement, the black male then put his hands up like he was about to fight.
Correct.
Did you see the taser get knocked out of the officer's hands?
I didn't see it get knocked out.
Sir?
I didn't see it get knocked out.
Okay.
You can see like I said, the actions towards it would made it seem like I just put two together, so when I work up.
Right.
I'm going to object to any speculation.
Just tell us what you saw. You saw an arm flailing.
Correct.
You had earlier seen the taser in the hand of the officer.
I didn't see the taser in my hand.
Okay.
Like I said.
Right. But you wrote in your statement that the officer deployed the taser.
Correct, because I seen the cartridge.
Okay? Did you see the officer tase Mr. Chapman?
I didn't see the taser.
All right? May I approach the witness again, Your Honor? We'd already talked about the interview that you gave with the state police at about noon on the 22nd, correct?
Correct.
And this was like a question and answer?
Correct.
They asked you what had happened?
Correct.
And again, you wanted to be open with them?
Correct.
You wanted to be honest with them?
Correct.
You wanted to be forthcoming with them?
Correct.
You wanted to tell them everything that you saw and everything that you knew?
Correct.
And did you tell the officers, the state police, that he tased them?
That's Your Honor. At this point, I'm going to object. This particular state police statement is not a verbatim statement from Mr. Provo. He's showing a reproduction that the state police compiled.
Did you tell the state police I'm sorry.
You can ask, but if you remember, he can remember it not.
I don't recall, but I see it up here, but I don't recall our mission.
As you read this, does it help you recall that you told the state police that you tased him?
No, it doesn't. Like I said, I don't even remember. I remember our conversations that I had, but not specific details of what I said.
And after whatever you saw with respect to the taser or the cartridge, as you talked about it today, in reaction to that is then when you saw Mr. Chapman with the arms flailing.
Correct.
Is that true?
Correct.
And then after you saw whatever happened to the taser and the cartridge, and then you saw whatever happened with respect to Mr. Chapman's arm flailing, you never saw the taser or the cartridge again, did you?
I seen the cartridge on the ground.
On the ground.
Correct.
But you never saw the taser and
Never,
the
no.
officer's hands again, did you?
No.
At that point, is that when you began to approach even closer to the situation?
At that point, I just stepped on my car and yes, I was walking up to him.
I'm sorry?
Running up to him. At that time, yes, when he turned around from him and it was face to face, that's when I was running up to him.
Okay. And as you ran up to the officer, again, looking at, if you could step down again, please. May I ask him to do that, Your Honor?
Right. Let me step down, sir.
And as we've already established where your car is in Commonwealth Exhibit 18, correct?
Correct.
And you're walking towards the officer and Mr. Chapman, is that true?
Correct.
And where are they? Where is Mr. Chapman and where's Officer Rankin at the time that you get to the police car?
Mr. Chapman's still in front of the car. At this point,
You-
Mr. Rankin is backing off from him.
Okay.
And just started to be in this area.
All right. And this is after the incident occurred with the flailing of the arms and everything, right?
Correct.
At that point, had Mr. Chapman ever gotten on the ground?
No.
Was the officer still yelling at him?
Yes, it was.
Do you remember what he was yelling?
You know,
And did Mr. Chapman ever get on the ground?
Get back on the stand.
He never got back on the ground. He never got on the ground at all.
you never got on the ground.
And at that time, Officer Rankin is backing up? Is that when he first draws the weapon?
Yes, that's when I was running up to you. That's when you saw me.
And that's the first time that you saw the weapon, correct?
Correct.
And as the officer drew the weapon, Mr. Chapman moved forwards towards the officer. True?
I was saying before.
He lunged towards him?
Yeah, I'm sure. Like I said, he made a gesture, like a fighting gesture.
Fighting gesture meaning he puts up his hands.
And yeah, like you would a jab, like you would jab towards somebody.
You recall the third interview or the second interview, third statement that you made to the state police, which occurred on May the 5th of 2015. You remember they asked you to come down again?
I didn't come down. I didn't. The second time I talked to state police, they came to Wal-Mart.
They called, my fault, I apologize, you're right. They came to Wal-Mart.
Correct.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Okay.
And show you a report of May the 5th when the police came to the state police to Wal-Mart to talk to you, correct? And if you just read this, not just read it to yourself, this paragraph down here, where it starts off, I'm standing next to the officer. See that?
Right.
Did you tell the state police on May the 5th that Mr. Chapman made a lunging motion towards the officer?
I didn't say lunging, I said made a jab. I think that straightforward. Every time I've been asked that question, he was never running towards him or anything like lunging towards him. It was a quick jab.
All right, so you deny telling the state police that he made a lunging?
I never said lunge.
Okay. But whatever the movement was, as you've described it, it was after that movement that the shots were fired.
Correct.
Did Mr. Chapman say anything?
Before then?
Yes.
He just said, you're going to fucking shoot me.
And that was before he made the gesture or whatever movement that you've described?
Correct.
He makes the statement, are you going to fucking shoot me? And then he makes a movement.
Correct.
And that's when the shots occurred.
Correct.
You described the shots as being in rapid succession, one right after the other.
If you're in a gun range, it would be like a gun range shot. It wasn't like a rapid, like, bah, but it was like a boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a difference from rapid.
And at the time, may I ask him one more time to sit down, Your Honor?
You may step down.
And at the time the shots were fired, where were you in Commonwealth's Exhibit 18?
I was right here.
And where was Mr. Chapman?
He was right in front of the car.
Right.
Basically, like in the middle, basically right here. This whole, basically where he was at the whole time we was dealing with him was between the front of the car and the middle of the car.
All right, you can return to your seat, please. And the first time, just to be clear, that you had seen any the first time you had seen any interaction between Mr. Chapman and Officer Rankin at the car, they were at the hood of the car.
Correct.
And at later point, Officer Rankin had retreated from that to a different position away from the car.
Correct.
May I have just a word with counsel, Your Honor, please? At the time of this event, was there a Wawa under construction that was nearby?
Yes, it was.
And that was, depending on where you're looking, but if you're looking towards Frederick Boulevard, that would have been on the right-hand side, correct?
Correct.
And did you see a number of construction workers at that Wawa site?
Correct.
Did you also see them later come down from that construction site?
No.
All right, if I may return these exhibits, Your Honor. Nothing further, sir.
Thank you. All right, let's go back over a few things. Arms flailing, what does that mean to you?
Judge, I object to what it means to him. He can describe the event and what he saw.
He can describe it. You should have viewed what he saw.
When we first talked on direct examination, you indicated that the victim flung around, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you were asked questions about arms flailing.
Correct.
What did you see? What was the movement that you saw?
Mr. Chapman.
And I believe you demonstrated it,
Stand up and
but please,
explain to the jury, what you saw was what.
Basically, if you're leaned
Your
over,
arms fell. Show the jury what you saw.
okay. Basically, if you was leaned over on the car, like when you turn around, it's kind of like you turn around and basically confront, go face to face with you.
okay, so he turned around swiftly,
Correct.
and
Like I said, but his arm was kind of out.
but his arm came out.
Right.
Okay, and at that time, did you see anything happen other than him turn?
No.
Okay, and you've indicated that you never saw a taser in the defendant's hand.
Correct.
And you've indicated that your statement that he tased him was because you saw the cartridge on the ground.
Correct.
Okay. And we got into a little bit about escalation, all right, and you talked about why you were so close.
Correct.
Okay, so in the ordinary course of what you do at Wal-Mart, how often do you assist Portsmouth Police Department?
All the time.
All the time?
Yeah. If usually it doesn't get to, it doesn't, it's rare to get moments of big moments like these, but when they do come, I do assist.
Okay. And so that's common for you.
Correct.
And if you see this, you assist.
Yeah, correct.
And you were standing side by side with the defendant.
Yes, I was.
Okay. And you also indicated that you talked earlier about this gesture that was made.
Correct.
And you were clear it was not a lunge.
Correct.
And you were clear it was not a charge.
Correct.
Okay, it was a gesture.
Right. The reason why I say it wasn't a lunge is because it wasn't no step, like a lunging step of I'm about to go starting to do something. It was more of, like I said, a jab. Like, I'm about to fight, I'm gonna jab at you to scare you.
Okay. Stand up and demonstrate, please, for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what that gesture was and where Mr. Chapman's body ended up at the end of that gesture.
You want to use this too?
No, I'm saying the move you saw him make, so if he did a gesture,
Right.
I want you to show the gesture he made and then where his body was positioned at the end of that gesture.
He came, basically what it was like I'm in a fighting mode, fighting motion, and I'm in like a jab step, like I'm right back, like a quick jab.
Okay, so he came right back.
Correct.
And where was his body positioned at the end of that? Standing straight up.
Correct.
And you could see his hands.
Correct.
No knife in his hands.
Have a seat.
No gun in his hands.
No, I didn't see nothing.
No knife in his hands.
No, it was balled up in his fist.
Balled up in a fist. And you could see from where you were.
Correct.
And you were side by side with the defendant.
Correct.
And how far is that from me?
Well, a little bit.
May I approach, Your Honor?
If you're standing straight ahead of me, you want to come further down? All right, here. That's another distance.
So this is how far the defendant was from Mr. Chapman.
Correct.
I don't have anything
And
further.
then, again,
I'm sorry, Your
I'll
Honor.
take the picture to the property.
Okay.
How many feet?
So tell me how many feet is in your
You can
estimation?
estimate.
About 5 yards, around 5
About
yards.
5 yards. Okay, and this is where
About 5, yeah.
5 yards from the defendant to Mr. Chapman.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I don't have anything further.
Counsel just asked you with respect to the gesture and the motions and things of that particular nature, correct?
Correct.
And in your handwritten statement, you said the suspect made a gesture as if he was about to charge the officer, correct? That's what you wrote.
If that's what I wrote, that's what I wrote. I don't.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Correct.
That's what you wrote within hours of the time of this event, correct?
That was an hour. If I wrote that, go back to the court, please.
Correct.
That was right after.
Within minutes.
You can say, yeah, 30 minutes.
Okay.
Here today, are you certain about whether he charged or lunged at the officer?
Yes, I am sure he did not charge.
And he did not lunge?
No, it was, like I said, a jab. It's like I said, I'm illustrating fighting because that's what I used to do. So when I'm illustrating, saying that he's in a fighting position, in the fighting modes, because he was tense, but it was more of a jab step. He didn't lunge towards him, but I would be, if I was fighting, I would get somebody off their toes. So I would jab at him.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
I'm going to show you a document. Mr. Broccoli has shown this to you as well. This is from your interview from the Virginia State Police, what they took home. I'm going to ask you to bring this part.
He didn't charge the officer, but he did. But he said.
You can't read
You don't need
it.
to read it out.
Oh,
Just read it to yourself.
I'm sorry.
And does that refresh your recollection about your conversation with the state police about whether he charged?
Correct.
What did you say to the state police about whether he charged?
He didn't never charge. He just made a gesture. Like I've been saying, I'm about to, basically like a jab step. Like,
And he ended up standing up straight.
correct.
Thank you, sir. I don't have anything further.
No, sir.
You may step down, please.
Commonwealth Vice, Your Honor.
I'll go first. All right, members of the jury, the counsel of the jury, now I need to take this one out of your presence. seated. Commonwealth question.
Judge, on behalf of Mr. Rankin, we'd have a motion to strike the Commonwealth's case with respect to the charges of first-degree murder and also a lesser-included charge of second-degree murder. I'd submit to the court that the best-case scenario, taking all the evidence and the inferences in the light most favorable to the Commonwealth at this particular stage, which we must, at the best, what they have shown the court and what could possibly go forward to the jury would be a case of voluntary manslaughter, which would also result in the dismissal of the indictment for use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. The only two witnesses that have offered any evidence to the court with respect to the events that occurred at that time that could be classified, if you will, as eyewitnesses, both indicate a significant altercation, confrontation that occurred between the officer and between Mr. Chapman at the time. They both indicate a significant amount, at least Mr. Provo does, a significant amount of yelling between the two of them, Rankin and Chapman both with voices raised. Both of the witnesses also clearly indicate that Mr. Rankin gave commands to get on the ground, get on the ground, get on the ground, after whatever confrontation occurred on the hood of the car. Obviously, Mr. Chapman did not get on the ground, did not follow the officer's instructions, and that's clear from the evidence. The only evidence that relates to what happened at the time that the shots were fired really Ms. Tynes doesn't offer a whole lot. She sees pushing and shoving, which I think is significant also because it's shoving on both parts, and it's the shoving on the part of Mr. Chapman and also upon Officer Rankin. But Mr. Provo, as he's testified, talks about whatever physical confrontation occurs. That confrontation then ceases. Officer Rankin retreats, and at that point, that's when Mr. Chapman makes some sort of motion. And whether it's a gesture, whether it's a movement, whether it's acting as if he's going to fight, it's some sort of motion which then precipitates the shots having been fired. Under those circumstances, there is no evidence before the court from which this court can allow a first-degree murder of willful, deliberate, and premeditated to go to the jury. I understand the law says that premeditation can occur within an instant of the shooting. But in this particular point, what we have at best is provocation, heat of passion, and then a response to that in which the defendant has acted not in the cool of a mind, but as a result of the passion. And there certainly is no time for the heat of passion to have cooled at the time the shots were fired, because it happens almost instantaneously or shortly thereafter within a second or two. So we clearly know that after the fact, the defendant then goes to render CPR. He says on the tape, "Don't die, don't die, don't die." He tells Mr. Chapman to breathe. That comes from Mr. Provo. He renders CPR. He gets a mask. He calls for the medics. He does everything that he's supposed to. His actions after the fact are just as relevant as his actions before the fact in the context of whether or not there's any willful, deliberate, and premeditation, and whether there's any malice. I understand that malice can be presumed from a deadly weapon. I understand that all murder can be murder in the second degree until it's either elevated by willful, deliberate, and premeditated or reduced by virtue of the facts and circumstances and the evidence that's been introduced. The only evidence the court has before it to allow this case to go before the jury is that there was an altercation, there was provocation, there was heat of passion, and as a result of that heat of passion, shots were fired. So even understanding the evidence in the light most favorable to the Commonwealth, I'd ask to strike the first, second, and use of firearm charges.
Okay.
Karen, we would ask the court to overrule that motion. We would argue there is a significant amount of evidence before the court that allows the court to allow the first-degree murder charges and use of firearm and commission of a felony to go on forward before the jury, Your Honor. First of all, with respect to the witnesses in the case that the Commonwealth has put on in respect to the law in Virginia, obviously, as counsel has indicated, premeditation can be formed in an instant. And what we have is evidence that there was, at best, pushing going on. And there is nothing within the law that allows individuals to use a severely disproportionate amount of force so as to shoot and kill someone in retaliation to, at best, a push, or at best, a jump forward and then a move back. And also, Your Honor, there is evidence that is before the court that this individual, this victim in this case, was unarmed. He had nothing in his hands. 2 witnesses have come before the court and said there was nothing in his hands. There was no reason to fear that anything deadly was going to come as a result of Mr. Chapman or his actions before the defendant. This is a police officer who has been trained within the police academy. Also, Your Honor, Gregory Provo has said before the court, he's testified that he on several occasions and always when situations happen at the Wal-Mart comes to the aid of the Portsmouth police officers, and he was standing side by side with the defendant in this matter to assist if need be. And so, Your Honor, not only is there the fact that at best you have pushing that took place, which doesn't even come close to being deadly or anything that would give the defendant the right to use deadly force against the victim in this matter, you also have an individual who is here before the court who has indicated that he was willing to aid and he was standing side by side with the defendant at that time. Your Honor, we don't have any evidence before the court that he immediately began to render CPR. What we have is evidence that he held him onto his lap, and at some point when other officers began to arrive on the scene, then we start to hear things about Officer Manning testifies that he ran back to the car to get gloves at that time to begin to do CPR. And then we also hear that the medics were staged, they were stopped. And we hear that Lieutenant Salsa perceived no threat at the scene, but that the medics were staged anyway, and then the medics were released to come to the scene minutes later after William Chapman was losing large amounts of blood to the point where the medic indicated that there was blood on her person. Your Honor, I think there is more than enough evidence at this stage. The Commonwealth would even argue that there's enough for the threshold of reasonable doubt at this stage to overcome that, and that this is well beyond the evidence that the Commonwealth has needed to show at the light most favorable of the Commonwealth, and would ask the court to overrule the defendant's motion.
We can't take what happened at the car in isolation. We can't take that one sliver of 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, which is what the Commonwealth is asking you to do. You have to consider the entire context and circumstances of the event from when they began, when Mr. Provo pointed him out, until the tragic conclusion of this. And when you consider all of the facts, you can't, they've talked all day about sanitizing the evidence. You can't sanitize what happened. You can't exclude what happened. You can't forget what happened with respect to the events that occurred before, at the car. We have the pictures of the taser. How did that taser get there? The court can easily conclude, and the evidence I think certainly establishes, that it was knocked out of his hand when the flailing motion came from Mr. Chapman. So we have an officer that confronts somebody. He doesn't listen to him. There's words, there's exchanges, there's pushing, there's flailing of arms, there's a disarming by virtue of the taser being knocked out, and then there's this movement, this gesture. It's all part of the res gestae.
That's not the procedure. You make the motion, he was going to do it. I'll let you go again, I'm going to have to let him go again, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to deny the motion at this time. All right? And I'm going to bring the jury back. We have all the luxury. Take the big steps. And we'll probably recess it to 2:15. How many weeks do you have here?
Well, we have 2 that are coming from Richmond. One, I'm not sure if he's going to show. He's called the clerk's office and said he's not coming. So we'll have to see if he arrives or not. We have another one. Then we have,
He's not coming.
sir?
He's not coming?
He said he's not coming.
Was he subpoenaed?
He was subpoenaed. He says he doesn't want to be involved. And I think he's called the clerk's office and relayed that message as well. And we've told him on a number of occasions he's been subpoenaed, and I think the clerk's office told him he's been subpoenaed and he has to be here.
You may just have one.
May just have one, but we have some other issues we can address to the court, and well, I could certainly call some state police with respect to impeachment evidence. We could do that today too.
What are the issues that you think we need to address with the court?
Do you want me to address them in open court? The juvenile record and evidence of turbulence and violence.
You have those witnesses here?
Well, I have one that's supposed to be here at 1, and the second one is the reluctant one that has said he's not coming.
All right, now, when that witness comes here, with respect to excuse the jury, and you can put them on the stand, and you can probably put what you want them to testify to. And then she's going to probably make an objection, and I rule on the objection. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Bring the jury back
Judge, we could also read a witness into the record, too. We could do that. Mr. Dykstra?
We can do that afterwards.
Yes, sir.
And Your Honor, for the record, I have some objections to items within that transcript.
He said to be seated.
You can bring All right, members of the jury, we're going to recess for lunch now, okay? The bailiff will take you directly to the jury lounge. And I did order lunch for you today, okay? And I did not give you a chance to pick and choose. Whatever you ordered yesterday is what you'll get today, okay? I hope you like what you ordered. You can see. Now, this is edible ice cream.
Yes, Your Honor.
Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday when the defense made the motion for continuance indicating that they had just received additional information with respect to what Vice either observed or did with respect to the case. I denied that motion, but I did suggest to you all that you all could get him on the conference call. You all can agree as to what the testimony would be. Something like a deposition. Now you're telling me that you can't agree on what he answered to?
No, Your Honor, he did answer, and that's not the problem that the Commonwealth has. There are certain items within the transcript.
I don't have a copy.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I approach, Your Honor?
Now, did she bring this to your attention?
a few minutes ago, earlier today?
This first thing this morning, Your Honor.
What page? What
Your Honor, there's a couple of different places. There's page 5.
hold on. What line? Starting at what line?
Starting at line 1, and the question is posed on line 4.
Wait. Question is asked from line 4.
I'm sorry, on page 4, line 23 is where the question is. And this is actually during,
Read what the question is.
the question is, and if you could tell us, as you recall it, approximately how far did the taser travel? Then Officer Dykstra's response is, I couldn't,
Is the answer starting on page 5?
yes, Your Honor, line 1.
All right.
I honestly couldn't even estimate because I didn't see the taser where it was in the median, and I didn't even realize it was a taser until I saw it. And then,
You object to that?
yes, Your Honor, because he's indicated he can't estimate.
And you said because I didn't see the tape where it was in the meeting, and I didn't even realize it was the tape that you saw. So you object to that?
No, Your Honor, that's, in retrospect, that's fine. There's another location if I can find it. Okay, it's page 13. And there's a couple of questions.
Starting which line?
Line 15 is a question.
Everything.
Okay, I guess my question is, based upon your recollection of the events, did your striking the taser cause it to go closer to Officer Rankin, or can you really tell that? And then the answer is, it went from wherever my foot scooped underneath of it in the direction that I was walking, and I was walking in the direction of Officer Rankin, who was providing chest compression. So my assumption is that it would be that it moved with me. I was moving closer to Officer Rankin, so I would assume that the taser itself moved closer to Officer Rankin as well, but it was closer in the scene of where he was at the moment in time. And again, Your Honor, this one is a little bit more concerning. The first one, he does say he can't really recall.
So what are you objecting to?
My objection is to the whole response, that I guess he could say it went from wherever his foot scooped underneath of it, and that's fine. But beyond that, he starts making assumptions, and he said it. So my assumption would be that it moved with me, and I was moving closer to Officer Rankin, so I would assume, so he says it twice, that he's assuming. And so I don't have a problem with it went from wherever my foot scooped underneath of it. But when we start talking about assumptions,
My first response, Your Honor, is that it's the Commonwealth that's questioning him, and it's in response to the Commonwealth. That's number one. As the court concedes by Mr. Wiggins, he's asking the questions, and that's the answer. Secondly, I mean, the officer tells us that he hit it. He's walking in the direction of Officer Rankin, so 2 + 2 = 4. I think it's just common sense as to what the officer's talking about.
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna clean it up. Starting at 9:19. It went from wherever my foot scooped underneath of it in the direction that I was walking. And I was walking in the direction of Officer Rankin, who was providing chest compressions. To stop there, I'm going to take out where it says, so my assumption would be that that's on 9:23, that comes out. 9:24, it continues to move with it, that comes out. Then it goes on to say, I was moving closer to Officer Rankin. That was state. And when you start saying, so I would assume that the table is set, that comes, you would testify, and I wouldn't let anybody testify based on assuming anything. On page 14, I'm deleting on page 13, line 25. So I would assume that the taser itself moved close to Officer Rankin as well. That comes out. Goes on to page 14, line 1. And I allowed to go and say, but it was closer in the sense of where he was at that moment in time. That would remain. What's your next one?
That's all, y'all.
All right. You got to get 215.
Yes, sir. All rise.